There's been a lot of chatter about free agent wide receiver Stefon Diggs going back to his old stomping grounds up in western New York and rejoining the Buffalo Bills. Of course, Buffalo made a huge move in the receiver room this offseason by trading for Bears wide receiver DJ Moore, so this leaves fans wondering if their GM Brandon Beane really has any appetite left to continue to add to this wide receiver room that desperately needed an overhaul from 2025. I'm going to cover what I think the pros and the cons are of Buffalo bringing Steph Diggs back into the fold, so let's get into it. So let's start with what would be the good in this reunion. Diggs was coming off a torn ACL in 2025 in New England after playing in Houston in 2024. I think he only played in 7 or 8 games that year, but he played in all 17 games in New England in 2025. He caught 85 balls off 102 targets, so not bad right there. And a lot of Diggs' production last year was out of the slot, I do believe, but with a lot of guys, Kayshon Boutte, Mac Hollins, Kendrick Bourne, even Demario Douglas, Javon Baker, a lot of the times played a lot of snaps for them. Guys that could just play outside, or even just guys that were versatile in general. Steph Diggs didn't have to play outside, so a lot of his work was out of the slot. Give him a lot of space, let him work, and it worked. He caught 85 balls off 102 targets, and he played all 17 games. So a very good strategy last year in New England, kept him healthy, and was still a very productive player. And of course, if we're talking about the pros of the Buffalo Bills adding Stefon Diggs back into the fold, back into the receiver room, you have to talk about Stefon Diggs playing his best football of his career with Josh Allen. And you could even argue Josh Allen played his best football, even though he won an MVP post Stefon Diggs. You could argue Josh Allen played his best football with Stefon Diggs on the football field with him. So, of course, their pass connection is going to fall into the pro category. In full disclosure, I am a Bills fan. I am an NFL fan first. I enjoy watching good football. I enjoy watching the best football players in the world. I enjoy watching the film off of those players and everything like that first, and then I am a Bills fan. So, NFL fan first, and then I am a Bills fan. But that is where my rooting interests lie. And in my opinion, in my lifetime, the Stefon Diggs is probably the best Bills receiver I have ever watched. Maybe Eric Mould, you could say. If you are a Bills fan, maybe let me know in the comment section who you think the best Bills wide receiver is that you've ever seen. Maybe you got to see Andre Reed. I was not that fortunate, so maybe Eric Moulds or Stefon Diggs for me. But either way, no matter how you slice it, Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen, one of the best on-the-field products for the Buffalo Bills, probably ever in their organizational history. So you definitely can't argue that, and certainly you wouldn't expect them to redeploy that in 2026, what they were doing in 2020, 2021, and things like that. But maybe you can get a semblance of that, and I can understand why fans would be curious about that, and why that would spark some curiosity in bringing Stefon Diggs back to Buffalo. And of course, the last part of the pros, there is a need at receiver, I do believe, still in Buffalo. The wide receiver room, as of right now, is looking like DJ Moore, Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Skylar Bell, and Keon Coleman. Guys like McCole Hardman are there, Tyrell Shavers, maybe he comes back later in the year, Trent Sherfield, and then a lot of the practice squad, kind of bottom of their end roster guys. So I do believe there is room for a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3, sort of in between DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir. I know Khalil Shakir works out of the slot a lot, but I think he could play on the outside a little bit more as well. So I think there is room for another receiver in between DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir, or maybe even where if you brought Diggs back, it would go DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, and then Stefon Diggs. And of course, you still have the tight ends. You still have Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, if he can stay healthy. Hopefully, they throw the ball to James Cook a little bit more out of the backfield this year as well. And I understand there is a lot of weapons outside of the receiver room, which is kind of why I am personally not in favor of bringing Stefon Diggs back, on top of everything else that we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But I can certainly see where the interest is in bringing another pass catcher into just the receiver room, just looking at the receiver room in a vacuum. DJ Moore, Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir would kind of be your DJ Moore, Josh Palmer, your outside guys. Khalil Shakir working out of the slot. I can understand wanting to bring Diggs in and go DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, and Diggs. And then you figure they would be able to split up the outside snaps with DJ Moore playing one outside receiver. They'd be able to split up the other receiver of a little bit of Diggs, maybe a little bit of Khalil Shakir, a little bit of Josh Palmer, a little bit of Keon Coleman, and kind of fill that outside role in the aggregate, and then run Diggs a lot in the slot, run Khalil Shakir a lot in the slot, maybe Keon Coleman, and you can just do a lot with those receivers. So I can understand the interest in wanting to bring Stefon Diggs back to Buffalo. But like I said, I'm not a fan of this presumable move, so let's go on ahead and just get into the kind of the cons side of what this move would look like for the Bills, or what this move would look like to the fans, or whatever you want to say. Kind of the cons of what this move would look like. And let's just talk about we have to talk about the elephant in the room, obviously. Stefon Diggs played for the Bills, and then he ended up leaving the Bills. So what happened whenever he left the Bills? He left with a $30 million dead cap hit, and that doesn't sound like a lot today. We've seen Denver move on from Russell Wilson taking whatever they took, $70 or $80, $90 million, however much dead cap they took. We saw Miami move on from Tua this offseason with much, much higher dead cap hits. But I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, I do believe that this Diggs move was kind of before those big dead money quarterback moves. So $30 million of dead cap for one player to not be on your roster was just a terrible, terrible thing back then. And of course the cap has been on the rise, so it hasn't necessarily affected the Bills as negatively as you would have thought of in the moment. But it was really just a crushing blow. He signed a 4-year, $96 million deal in 2022, and then he wasn't on the team by the 2024 season. So the 2023 offseason into 2024, he was no longer on the team, and he was a Houston Texan, not a Buffalo Bill, and the Bills had $30 million on their cap sheet for 2024 for Stefon Diggs to not be a Buffalo Bill. So it absolutely killed the team, and they just could never replace him. Of course, you could say that's not Stefon Diggs' fault that they could never replace the guy. That's the GM's fault. That's Brandon Beane's fault. But he shouldn't have had to replace him. He had a receiver. He had a great quarterback-receiver connection, and they were a fantastic duo, and there was no reason to break that duo up other than it just not working in the locker room or just not working personally between one or two or three or more of these parties, Sean McDermott included. Stefon Diggs, Josh Allen, Brandon Beane, all these parties included. It just wasn't working between one or two or three or more of those parties. And of course, that resulted in Stefon Diggs leaving the team and going to the Houston Texans. But overall, it really just put the Bills in a horrible spot that they were not at all prepared for. And you can see that just by the rosters and the receiver rooms that they have put together. I mean, just go look at the depth chart last year. Khalil Shakir is your best receiver on the team last year, probably. And that's just not great. And I love Khalil Shakir just as much as probably anybody else. Great player, great with the ball in his hands and everything like that, but you certainly don't want him being your number one receiver that you're looking to throw the ball to. And of course, the Bills did finally kind of address it this season by bringing in DJ Moore, and that's sort of the reason why I think the Bills can be okay without signing Stefon Diggs as well. Not that I would have been a fan of it prior to, because we're going to get into some of the off-the-field stuff, obviously. But after the Bills added DJ Moore, I think it just really slotted everybody down into a position in this room that they're going to be comfortable in. You're not depending on Joshua Palmer being your wide receiver 2 some days or wide receiver 3. He can be your wide receiver 3 or 4. Khalil Shakir doesn't have to be, again, your wide receiver 1. He can be wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 some days. You're not depending on Keon Coleman to break out and be a star player. And of course, this video is mostly about the receiver room in Buffalo, but the tight ends are going to help. Like I said, James Cook hopefully can catch more balls out of the backfield. That will help take some pressure off the pass game and these receivers getting open. But adding of DJ Moore is also going to help. But the Bills not being able to address this up until this season right now, I think Diggs kind of caught them blindsided. Of course, I mean, they just signed him to a deal in 2022. Like I said, not on the team by 2024. Probably not what you're imagining when you're signing him to the deal in 2022, signing to a 4-year, $96 million deal. Probably not envisioning him leaving the team abruptly in a season and a half. Definitely caught them off guard. Of course, it's not Diggs' fault that they couldn't fill the position, but they weren't able to fill the position because it's not easy to replace an all-pro level receiver that they lost in Stefon Diggs. So absolutely killed the team. And I would be curious to hear Josh Allen's opinion. Not that I would be able to talk to Josh Allen, but I would be very curious to hear what Josh Allen's opinion would be of the Bills adding Stefon Diggs back to the receiver room. I would be very curious about that. And lastly, as a con, I do want to talk about the off-the-field stuff. The NFL did determine insufficient evidence to punish Diggs in the NFL this season, so he's not going to get suspended, nothing like that. I do believe his case was worked out in court. Of course, I certainly don't want to dive into that. I am not a lawyer. I have no legal expertise or anything like that. But of course, if I'm the Bills, I don't want to mess around with anybody in particular like that, personally. Of course, NFL teams feel very differently. Deshaun Watson got a very large, fully guaranteed contract. So not great. Not hard to just respect women and not be an idiot. So not great on the part of Stefon Diggs there. And that is tough saying because I was a big Diggs defender, of course, and his time in Buffalo was obviously a big fan. Not great, though. Not great with the off-the-field stuff. And just, of course, I mean, hey, maybe the Bills have a different opinion on that. Of course, they stuck with Von Miller through his ongoing legal issues in the past there. I do believe those charges went to court, and whatever happened there, happened there. Max Harrison, not a great history, of course. What's happened there has happened there as well. And of course, who knows? We just have to go with what the legal cases say and whatnot. But never great to be in that position for any of those players. And of course, not great for, in this particular instance, Stefon Diggs with the off-the-field stuff. So not the only reason I would be out on this free agent signing for the Buffalo Bills. I do think he's a declining player coming in his 30-plus season, whatever he was in New England last year. And he just killed the team when he left. And some wounds just never heal with time. Some wounds take longer to heal, I guess, than 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it's been since Diggs was last in Buffalo. But I would be good if I'm the Bills. Let's roll with DJ Moore. See what some of these young guys got, like Skylar Bell, even Keon Coleman stepping up into a role, and just see what we can do. And you know Josh Allen's not going to let you down. And every single year of his career, he's led this team to a fantastic offense. Even though it's looked sluggish in some spots, the numbers have always been really good, and they always score points. So Josh Allen is not going to let you down in that category. And they added DJ Moore. So let's go see what happens, and let's hope this offense can turn the page on 2024 and 2025. And turn a new page with their new coach, with Joe Brady. Overall, I am obviously not a fan of this potential move for Buffalo. In my opinion, if this was any other receiver that hadn't had great success with Josh Allen, I don't believe this would really even be a talking point. Of course, like I said, the pass connection with Allen does help, but I also believe this mostly stems from Bills fans' frustrations with the receiver room since Diggs has left. And as I said, I do believe there still could be a need at receiver for the Bills, whether they are able to address that right now in free agency, or one of these guys that comes off the roster in August, one of these late cutdowns, or they are banking on guys like Skylar Bell and maybe even Keon Coleman to round out the wide receiver room into the future. But I do believe there is space for another pass catcher in 2026. But I don't think a Stefon Diggs reunion should be in the cards for Buffalo. I know I said I think there still is a need for another pass catcher, but I think Allen is going to have a much improved options around him just from bringing in DJ Moore. But we will see. Maybe we haven't seen the last of the Allen-Diggs connection. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you did, and thank you for watching.